Hello, welcome to the sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Open Series in Chicago for the first time. I am Nick Miller alongside Jeff Hoogland. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fantastic, Nick.
Magic Origins has released new set, which means we're talking to Jeff because every time a new set comes out, you have something that's going on.
A lot of sweet new cards we got to try out.
Today, you're not playing your typical 3-color, 4-color cards I own, kind of mid-rangey. You usually got some sort of Savage Knuckleblade in there or something. Today, you're playing blue-white control. Not a style I see you play a lot. You know, you got a bunch of new cards, which we'll get into, but why would you kind of move to this direction in Standard?
So I think even with all of the new cards that were printed out of the new set, that Abzan and Red-Green Devotion are still like two of the best and strongest decks in the format. So playing a Dissolve, slightly go bigger deck than those decks is a reasonable place to be if you're expecting to play against those types of decks a lot.
Okay, so you've got a control deck here. You're using the sort of the Thopter theme. You've got 4 Hangerback Walker. A lot of people saw this card at the pre-release, said it was insane. You think this could be the future of Standard?
I think we're all going to be playing Hangerback Mirrors before long. The cards can slot into literal anything. It provides a reasonable amount of value. It's a decent 2-drop in a format that's really short on decent 2-drops for mid-range and control decks especially. And in this type of shell, this type of deck historically has a hard time with the aggro matchup. This is a 2-mana card that trades 1-for-1 with a Dragon Fodder in the worst case, and it can do even more than that if you even get 1 or 2 counters on it.
Right, to team up with Hangerback Walker, you got Thopter Spy Network, which is what you're coining Better Blossom?
Better Blossom, yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't lose you life, and it does a Biden of Thassa-esque effect where it lets you draw some cards.
Sure.
In addition to Hangerback Walker letting Thopter make tokens for you, if you have Hangerback on 2 and Thopter on 4, Hangerback can draw a card if it connects. So that's a good effect.
And you've got a bunch of artifact theme here as well. You've got the Artificer's Epiphany, which is sort of the new divination, but it's instant speed, although it does have the drawback of discarding an artifact.
Yeah, I tested a lot of Sultai decks, and there were a lot of times where like the draw 2 discard 1 mode on Sultai Charm was just fine. So in that type of theory, we started playing Artificer's Epiphany, and then the effect where it's all upside when you have an artifact is great. And even the discard isn't awful when we don't have an artifact because it fuels our dig through time.
Right. As any blue-white control deck, you're going to have a bunch of the classic cards here, Dig Through Time, Dissolve, Disdainful Stroke, all that stuff.
Yep.
Still more new cards, though.
Yeah.
Clash of Wills, the new counterspell everyone's been talking about.
Our Syncopate kind of ties the deck together. It gives us a nice proactive counterspell that we can play in the main deck that isn't something as narrow as Disdainful Stroke or Negate. It lets us counter Corsair Crew fixes on the draw. It lets us counter things like Dragon Fodder and other aggressive cards when we're on the play. It's just very flexible.
Yeah, I think we've seen the power of just even Force Spike when people were playing Slumgar Scorn without, their dragon.
Correct.
What the power of a card like this can be for just 2 mana.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, we've got the new Swift Reckoning here as an Assassinate, and you're obviously going to have Spell Mastery going on in this deck.
Yeah, you do a lot of the time. It's also just fine, if they attack you with their 1-drop, you can just play it on your turn on 2 as your first spell to kind of keep up tempo again, giving us more tools to keep up with the aggressive decks that are generally harder matchups for these types of decks.
Now, this is a fun combo. You've got the old Darksteel Citadel to combo with your Thopter Spy Network, always having it on. And of course, when you have extra copies, you get to pitch it to the Epiphany, right?
Well, if you have a copy, we don't have to discard a card with Epiphany. So and the nice thing is, even though we're only playing 7 artifacts, all of them come down before we cast our divination on 3. So we often just get to draw 2 on 3.
Right. So the combos are even deeper than on first level.
Yeah,
so
it's just good synergy.
Patrick Sullivan would say good deck building.
I'd like to think so.
So you've got more of the good classic blue-white cards. You've got Last Breath, Valorous Stance, Elspeth, of course, and then an Ugin is kind of more ways to win the game.
Yep, and actually the reason why I really started working on this deck is because, like I said, I'm expecting Abzan and Green-Red, so I think Dig, End Hostilities, and Elspeth, like those 3 cards together, are just very powerful in the format in general. So finding the right shell to fit all 3 of those cards in was what I was working on for this first week.
Sure. So what have you kind of been playing against, testing and grinding and figuring out what's this deck's strengths and weaknesses?
So, like I said, the way we built it and the way it tested, Abzan and Red Green were very powerful matchups. And then the secondary was that post board we wanted to get the Goblin and Red deck matchup to as close to or above 50% as possible. And I think with our sideboard plan, we were able to successfully do that.
Okay, we'll move into the sideboard. You have more new cards. Displacement Wave here. Upheaval, as you're calling it. You've got a lot of nicknames for these new cards.
So Displacement Wave is our card to beat the red decks. I don't think I've ever lost a game in testing where we have Displacement Wave in the first 4 turns of the game against the Goblin decks. It wipes out their Dragon Fodders and their Hoardling Outbursts, and the tempo it gives you from returning all of their 1-drops to their hand kind of bridges a gap to get you into end hostilities into Elspeth to actually win the game in that matchup.
Okay. Has it got utility in other matchups, or is it mainly there just to battle red?
I think it's reasonable against any enchantment decks that are running around that are playing like Sigil of the Empty Throne and Banishing Light to kind of play their removal spells. So I was bringing it in those matchups too when we tested those briefly.
Okay. You've got a bunch of classic cards we expect. You have more Last Breaths, you got some negates, Perilous Vault, all these things. But you also got some Stratus Walkers. We saw this card do some work in the Jeskai decks, a couple weeks ago.
Yep, Stratus Dancer is very good because not only is it a card for the control mirror, but it's another card we get to bring in against the red deck. A Grey Ogre is fine when you play it as a morph creature because it can block the tokens. It then also gets to flip up to counter a Stoke the Flames or even another token maker.
Sure. You've got the Fated Retribution, which is a card we haven't really seen a lot of, but people, were having it in their control decks as a major trump.
So Fated Retribution is fantastic because Darksteel, Citadel, and Thopter Spy Network don't get touched by it. So when you bring it in those matchups, your threat stays on the table and generally all of theirs get wiped out. The one way the green-red deck is able to steal games from you is Genesis Hydraing into a Nissa. So Fated Retribution cleans up everything Nissa has done to the board.
Sure, hits all the pieces. Got a Hidden Dragon Slayer in here as well. It's more morph, more anti-red.
Yep, it's a card that gets to come in against green-red to tag Whisperwood Elemental, which can be a troublesome card for end hostilities decks sometime, and it is just a fine 2-drop with lifelink against the red decks.
Okay. As someone who's been playing a lot, we'll kind of move away from the deck and more to like the environment in which we're going into. What do you see? How do you see the format going, and what cards from Magic Origins do you see popping up?
Like I said, I think Hangerback Walker is it's very good. It's just the flexibility of where it can go and the levels that it plays at. Sometimes, you draw it on turn 12 and play it as a 6/6.
Not bad. Anything else that you're not playing in this deck that you're kind of looking out for?
I think all of the Planeswalkers are a reasonable, playable power level. I think Nissa stands out to me as the best card of that cycle. Just Borderland Ranger was very good in Standard, and the Abzan decks are very mana hungry, so getting that extra land and then getting value off that card later is just insane.
All right. Well, we're here in your hometown, basically.
Yep, 20 minutes from home.
You get to play a home field open on the turf here, as it were. But 2 buys, you've done well this year, looking to make the run of the Players' Championship. We'll look out for you here, Jeff. Thanks for joining me on the sideboard. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Chicago.